I don't know how many of you know who I am or anything about me, so I'll maybe start with a bit of background. So my name is Lynda Wharton. I've been a Kiwi for about 47 years now, originally from England. My background for the last 36 years is that I've been in full-time clinical practice as a naturopath and a traditional Chinese acupuncturist, specialising in holistic women's health. So that's always been my passion, my vocation and my calling. And alongside that, because I always have got things to say, I've had a second career as a communicator, as a health researcher and writer. For many years, I was a columnist in various publications in New Zealand and Australia. And I'm also the author of 3 holistic women's health books. So that kind of brings us up to this year. And going back to last year, I was watching, first of all, I was watching with interest the development of the COVID-19, we'll call them vaccines the first time, and after that, we'll just call them injections. So I was watching with interest, and then as the injections started to be rolled out in the countries ahead of us, which was many countries, there were big rollouts in UK, Israel and USA, big rollouts before it came to us, and many other smaller rollouts in other countries. So I started watching the adverse reaction databases in those countries and looking at the government reports that were coming out weekly. And I very quickly became very alarmed by what I was seeing, because it was definitely an unprecedented picture, the sheer number and the number of very severe reactions and the number of deaths that were reported temporally connected to receipt of an injection. So I was watching this, very concerned about it. And then it was our turn here in New Zealand. And overseas, there was a lot of debate. There was a lot of discussion on mainstream media and various other platforms with, scientists, epidemiologists, virologists, immunologists, talking about the same concerns that I had, that I was seeing looking at the reports and the databases. So I was waiting for the same kind of thing to happen in New Zealand, for our experts to start some kind of a scientific debate and discussion, and it didn't happen. So basically, the only discussion was, from the government, the one party, the Labour Party, the government narrative of safe and effective, and silence from every other quarter. The mainstream media was 100% on board with safe and effective, and there was no questioning going on. So this really concerned me, and I decided to just set up a Facebook group to give myself a space where I could share the science from overseas, share the clinical trial data, the reports from the Lancet, the British Medical Journal, Nature Journal, all of those big journals. So I started doing that. I set a little group up called the Health Forum NZ. That was about 8 months ago now. And I started just posting and doing what I do, which is communicating, asking questions, sharing my concerns. And it very quickly started to attract attention on Facebook, and I started to attract people to the group. And so now, 8 months later, we're approaching 47,000 members. This is not at all what I planned or envisioned or anticipated. It's completely taken over my life. It's a full-time job on steroids. It's no longer just a platform where I just have a nice little write. It's become an entire movement, a support movement for New Zealanders. So what happened very quickly was people became aware of the questions I was asking. And so that started to attract people to our group, New Zealanders who themselves had had an adverse reaction, or somebody close to them, or unfortunately other New Zealanders who had lost a loved one after they had received their injection. sometime in the days, hours, days, or weeks afterwards, usually suddenly and unexpectedly, those deaths. So I was still posting the science, but at the same time, I rapidly morphed into a support community for the New Zealanders who were living a reality very different to anything that was being discussed, you know, in the 1 o'clock updates and the 6 o'clock news and on the front page of the Herald. So I started to feel, and I still feel, like I'm kind of in that movie Sliding Doors, where I'm living in two parallel realities. One is everything, you know, the messaging on every platform 24 hours a day about safe and effective. And the other is my 70-hour-a-week job of one-on-one liaising with injured and traumatized New Zealanders. So I can tell you that I, along with my group of volunteers, there's 40 of us, we've probably got the biggest finger on the pulse in New Zealand to the reality of what's really happening in Kiwis' lives. So when I realised all of these people coming and sharing their stories, I thought, okay, we need to record these stories. We need to create a citizens database along the lines of what they've done in Israel. It's called the People's Committee in Israel. And they are also volunteers who have recorded all of the deaths and adverse reactions in the Israeli rollout. So we now have a team, the Health Forum now has a team of about 40 volunteers. Many of them have got medical backgrounds or legal backgrounds. And so the groups we've got an adverse reaction group of mostly ex-nurses or current well, they're actually all ex-nurses now because they've all lost their jobs through the mandates. Some of them were current nurses, they're all now ex-nurses. And we've recorded over 2,000 serious adverse reactions. So we don't record the sore arm or the 24-hour temperature or a headache. You know, yes, those things happen. Those things happen in the tens of thousands, and it's, not very pleasant, but that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in the serious reactions. So we have over 2,000 recorded that cover the entire spectrum of lots and lots of cardiac issues, lots of pericarditis, myocarditis, blood clots, strokes, heart attacks, uncontrollable blood pressure for the first time, heart arrhythmias, hemorrhages, vasculitis, which is inflammation of blood vessels. So lots of cardiac stuff. And then we've also got a second big category of neurological issues. So things like onset of multiple sclerosis in close proximity to receiving the jab, worsening of neurological conditions, paralysis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, myasthenia gravis, the really big, really serious neurological damage. So we've got a lot of that in our database as well. Then we've got a range of other things. So they could be shingles. So one of the acknowledged issues with the mRNA vaccines is that there is a period of about 10 to 12 days after each jab where the immune system is greatly suppressed. And this allows any latent viruses in the body to get a real foothold and take off. So many of the doctors I've spoken to in New Zealand have said they've never seen anything like it in their many years of practice in terms of the number of shingles cases, herpes zoster, that are coming through. Also reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus and herpes simplex virus. So we've got lots of those recorded. I could talk for 4 hours on that, but that just gives you a tiny little cross-section of the types of adverse reactions that we're recording. And not just us, some of those adverse reactions are in MedSafe as well. MedSafe is the CALM database, which is the government database. And when you go and have a look at it, there's also on another page, MedSafe acknowledges that they record only about 5% of actual adverse reactions. So when you look at those numbers, a very conservative thing to do would be to multiply those numbers by 10, and a more accurate thing to do would be to multiply those numbers by 20. So when you do that, it's shocking reading. It really is. I encourage you all to go and do that if you don't think there is a problem at all with the injections. So that's one team, the adverse reactions. Another team is what we call our deaths team. They have it really hard. So they're the team that spend hours every week scouring online death notices and memoriams, and belonging to many, many social media groups where adverse reactions and deaths are discussed. And so the deaths database that we have, we're not doctors, we're not coroners. The coroners take up to 2 years after the death before the report is released. So most of the deaths that have occurred in New Zealand, we've got over 100 on MedSafe. Most of those we won't know for 2 years whether our government deems them linked to the injection as a causal factor. So what we've done is we've recorded the deaths that are temporally linked. So we've looked for deaths that have occurred where we've been able to 100% confirm that this person received the COVID injection, either the first or the second dose, and then sometime in the hours to, most of them fall within hours out to 4 weeks post-injection, there has been a sudden and unexpected death. So many of those deaths are blood clots, strokes and heart attacks. Many of them are also just found dead the next morning, died in sleep overnight. The ages of our database range from age 12 up to age 100. And we're seeing an increasing clustering of temporally related deaths in the younger population now that it has been, progressively moved down to younger and younger people. So that is we've got a redacted deaths database that's public facing. I can actually give that link to Gabrielle so that she can share it with all of you and you can have a look at that. We've got a new team at the moment that starts next week. They are data analysts and 3 nurses, and their job is to fully redact the adverse reactions database to take out any identifying factors. And then that actually will be disclosed to the public as well as a public-facing database where nobody can be identified. And then the data analysts are actually going to analyse all of that data and create the graphs and charts to extract the stories in those recordings that we have to make that public-facing as well. How am I going for time, Gabrielle? I'm busy talking. I've got about another 5 minutes, I think. So another team that we have a team of ACC advocates. So we make sure as much as we can that New Zealanders know that when they have an adverse reaction or when somebody in their family dies temporally related to receipt of the injection, that they are eligible to apply for ACC support. With the death, there is a lump sum payment that helps cover funeral expenses and counselling, trauma support, etc. And with the injuries, there's financial support. In theory, there's financial support for replacing wages and helping with medical expenses. Unfortunately, a lot of the cases are being turned down, and that's where our ACC advocates come in. So they support those families to challenge the ruling and go through the ACC process. We've also got a legal team, and they're staffed by lawyers and legal executives. And their job is when people contact the Health Forum with their adverse reactions or their deaths, a lot of those people, especially if there's very unusual circumstances, we ask if they are willing to give an affidavit, a legally sworn document to our legal team. So we have many, many affidavits now from bereaved families, from families where there's been serious injury. We're also collecting affidavits where there's been medical discrimination, because now I'm receiving probably about 100 emails a week from people who are locked out of medical services, even though we were promised that this, because they're unvaccinated, even though we were promised that this would never, ever be a thing in New Zealand. I'm here to tell you it is 1000% a thing in New Zealand. So many Kiwis are now reporting their discrimination to the Health and Disability Commissioner in response to our recommendations. And then we've got another team who are doctors and nurses that help those who are injured. They help them report to MedSafe, to CALM, because most New Zealanders don't even know that this is a thing. There hasn't been a single 1 o'clock update that's told New Zealanders with a scrolling message across the bottom of the screen that if they've had an adverse reaction, they should report it to the government database. Have any of you seen that knowledge for New Zealanders? No, that's kind of a secret. So we have a whole team of medical people, and we pass our adverse reactions, our injured people across to the CALM team. They help them report. Some people are able to do it on their own, but, we've got elderly, traumatized, injured, people with cognitive decline after the injection. They can't do it themselves. So you can see we've got a massive, massive moving, dynamic, incredible thing going on with the Health Forum. And 8 months ago, I had no vision, no inkling that this was going to become my life. I moved to a beautiful part of Auckland. I'm 60. It was time for me to kick back and, work 3 days a week and have a relaxed grandma life. And I've actually never been so busy in my entire life as now. But it's work I feel deeply, deeply called to. I've got a faith that's been renewed through this. You might think, how on earth could it be renewed through this? But it's been the most challenging thing I've done in my entire life. And the only way I can do it is to ask God to protect me, because I'm a very, very unpopular person, because I'm daring to challenge safe and effective. So I ask for protection. And I ask that his wisdom and grace and compassion works through me. I'm not doing this in my own strength. I couldn't possibly take this task on in my own strength. And I haven't been abandoned. I've been supported the whole way through. So it's been a great reaffirming of my faith, and I'm very grateful for that. And I've met the most incredible, incredible New Zealanders that I never would have met without starting this endeavour. And now my big concern is the children. I'm deeply, deeply worried for the 5 to 11-year-olds who are about to be routinely jabbed. We've got many, MedSafe themselves have got over 2,000 adverse reactions reported from the age of 12 up, 12 to 19, I think it is. Remembering that that's likely 5%, so multiply that by 20 times to give you a more accurate reflection of the adverse reactions that have been reported in that age group. And remembering again that sore arm and a headache, they don't get reported. Nobody can be bothered doing that. These are the ones where they've ended up in ED or in a hospital ward. I'm deeply worried about the children. So that's my next focus in the Health Forum. We've got a brains trust. We've got some amazing scientists who are aligned with our work, who behind the scenes, because it's not safe for them to be visible, unfortunately, in this time right now. And they're the brains trust. So they're doing the analysis of the journal reports and what's happening with children overseas. And there is a real cause for concern. So I'm going to be doing a lot of posting in the coming weeks. Now that we have a kickoff date for the young children, I'm going to be doing a lot of posting and getting guest experts to post in the Health Forum about the risk-benefit analysis, because we never hear about that. And that's what we should be talking about. Yeah. So that's my time, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And if you're not already there, you're warmly welcome to join us. We're called the Health Forum NZ. We're on Facebook. That's our main community where we've got nearly 47,000. We're also on Telegram, but that's a non-interactive platform. We've got all the commenting turned off. And we're also on MeWe. And I'm really trying to grow that platform because we can speak freely over there. I have to gag myself on Facebook because I keep getting banned and sent to prison on Facebook. So blessings, guys, and thank you.